So today, the ds-incubator is again a continuation of our series about working with Git from the terminal. We are at a very important stage, I think, because we are learning the details of working with branches, and hopefully by the end of the session about remotes, you will understand how the combination between understanding branches and understanding remotes combined gives you all that you need to understand in depth how to work efficiently with pull requests, because that's exactly what it is. A pull request is no more and no less than a branch of the main line of development, so that those changes, instead of being merged into the main line of development directly, get first discussed and reviewed by other members of the teams. And the way you discuss those changes is through a remote version of your local copy of the repository, right? So that's why, branches plus remotes make up a pull request, basically, which is just a name that GitHub came up with. So we have CJ now here. So we have covered all the kind of recommended topics of Git branches of the lesson, but there is 3 optional exercises that I think illustrate very well real use cases, basically. So I wanted to take this extra meetup to kind of show Git branches in practice, like to solve problems that are part of our day-to-day work. So the very first optional exercise is actually not the one that is shown on screen. So can you confirm that you see my screen? You should be reading moving commits to another branch. Yeah, cool. So that's the exercise I would like to start discussing first. The idea is that sometimes it does happen, I do it all the time, that I'm working on my master branch, which is by default the main line of development. It may have a different name, maybe it's called main, but it's still a convention. It's just the main line of development. And then you start adding changes, and that may be a mistake. Because you forgot to create first a new branch, or maybe, as I do many times, it's just because I'm just trying things out and I notice that there is something useful and I create a commit to just lock that useful work that I've done into a commit, which is the only way that you really have with Git to save your work. And then I realized, okay, now I have a commit in master, but I want to share that work with someone else, so it cannot go on master. It has to be pushed or shared with other colleagues on a feature branch, right? So how do you move those commits from one branch to the other? So there are a number of approaches actually to that. I can think of 3 right away, but I'm going to be walking through the case that demonstrates this lesson, because it also shows off a feature of Git that Jackson presented, I think, the other day when I wasn't here, which is the idea of resetting a branch to a different state. And there is different ways in which you can do that, from a soft mode to a very hard mode. So we are going to be working with Git reset hard and later with Git reset soft, but to do a completely different thing. So let me first start by kind of showing you the situation of my repo. I did git status with a -s flag. Remember, what we get is a very compact status, so compact that if there is nothing added to the staging area, the output is nothing. So the result of git status gave no output actually. That's why immediately the console again gave me the chance to start typing. And then in the second line, I typed git branch, because git branch tells me with an asterisk, which is the branch in which I am standing right now. So, okay, I am standing on the master branch, and for whatever reason, let's start working on this master branch. Although we generally know that if we are working on something that we intend to share with someone else, or even for exploratory purposes, we should be probably in a different branch, but that's fine. Very often it happens that we start doing work there. So let's create, for example, a new file. So I'm going to do couch B. I'm creating a new file called B. If I do now git status minus S, you would see that the file B has the question mark, which means that it is a new file that Git has no knowledge about. So I'm going to add it to the staging area. So if I now do git status, you see that has an A in green now because it has been added. So it's ready to be committed. So I can do git commit with a little message, something like add B. And that's it. So if I do git status again, the staging area is clean. So git log, I like the one-line version, also gives me, the last commit that I have done appears at the top of the log. So we have effectively done a commit. I can improve my git log. Remember that there were a number of ways. For example, I can say decorate, and it will tell me which branch actually is pointing to that commit. So now you can see that, okay, this commit has been done in the master branch, but now I realize, oh shoot, actually I wanted to be working instead on a different branch. How do I do that? Okay, so you remember that, creating a branch, a branch is simply a reference to a commit. It's one way to give a label to, in this case, the commit that is at the top of the history of your repository. So if I now create a new branch with git branch, let's call it new branch, and I do git log again, you will see that now at the top of the history, I have two branches, right? One that was the one I was working before, master, and now I create this new branch called new branch, right? But also notice a subtlety. When I did git branch, I did not change to the new branch. If I ask Git, tell me which branch I'm still standing on master. So it is a good time to now change to my new branch. New branch. And now if I ask again, which branch am I standing on? I'm standing on a new branch. So that is only to know what would happen if I start adding even more commits right now. But the git log didn't change at all, right? One line, decorate, git log one line, git log one line, decorate. There you go. As you can see, I'm still, the two branches are still pointing to the top of the history. So what do I want to do now? Well, what I want to do is to revert my mistake, which is basically to move the master branch back one commit. At the time when I added this file B, master branch right before that, it was pointing at this commit here, right? So there's a couple of ways, and the way in which we're going to do it is to tell Git, as you can see here. So we already did number one. We did a couple of commits on master, and then we created a new branch. And now we're going to rewind the master branch back to the commit where it should be. And we're going to do it with git reset hard, right? So hard will move that branch right away. And in this case, we are going to just give the number, this number here. And that's one way. So let's do just that. Git first, in this approach, git checkout master. In this approach, we switch to master, right? Because now that we are standing in master, we can say reset hard, and we can paste the SHA of the commit to which we want to reset. Notice that in this command, I'm not saying which is the branch that I want to reset. I'm not saying git reset master. And the reason is because I'm standing on master. I personally prefer the commands that are more explicit, and I explicitly say, reset the master branch to this commit. So I could, because that's safer, right? Even if you are standing in master, if you don't realize, you may be hard resetting a different branch. So I prefer to say git reset hard, and the way in which you express from and to commands in Git is generally in that order. First you say, from, so you say from master, and then to the destination. In this case is this SHA. So if my understanding is correct, this should work just as it should work if I did not use master. So let's see if that does work. Cannot do hard reset with path. So maybe I'm wrong with that. Let's see. I was wrong with that. It looks like I have to change to master and then from there hard reset. So sorry for giving you the wrong information. So if I now do again the log, so let's find the command on the history on one line decorate. You can see that master is actually at the commit that it was supposed to be. I'm not seeing the other branch because my log command did not include the all flag, but if I do, now I do see all branches, right? I see the new branch pointing, one commit ahead, and I see the master branch, one commit behind. So I kind of fixed the problem, right? There's other ways to do this too. So the way I kind of like the most, that I use the most, does not use hard reset, but actually uses one feature of the command git branch, that is the -F or force flag, which allows you to move a branch wherever basically you want. So say if I wanted for the master branch to be at this commit here, whatever that is, so that is like 1, 2, 3 commits behind where it is now, and 4 commits from the top. So let's say that the one thing that you need to do is that you need to check out a different branch. So let's do git checkout new branch. So now git branch shows that I'm standing at new branch. So if I wanted to move the branch master to say this position, right? I can do something like git branch master. If I left this command right here, Git will think that I want to create a new branch master. It will fail because the branch master already exists, right? And that's what it says. A branch named master already exists. But if you add the a SHA, like the place where you want it to move, and you say -F, you move the branch to that position. So let me show you the log again. There you go. So you can see what I did just now. So let's go back to, so you see now that the master branch moved to the SHA that I told it. So let me go back and show you the command. The command I used was this one here. I said git branch master, basically create a new branch at this new commit, and it will fail unless I say force. So that's the way I prefer, because I can be explicit about which branch is the one that I want to move. And now I'm going to take a few moments to read the comments, because I saw that there are some questions there or comments, but if you want to voice them, go ahead and do it now. Constanza, I see you were the first one asking or commenting something. Let's see.
But I guess it's kind of already answered by Jackson. I was just confused with this hard reset, if it's how commits actually not get lost. So I think it's kind of answered already.
Yeah, the very short, and even if you don't know very well how to recover commits, the very short answer to Git is, whatever you do, if you create a commit, it is possible, might not be easy, but it is possible to recover. Even if you remove completely a branch, there is something that very obscure that is called the git ref log. That is a place where you can recover stuff that you removed completely. So Git is it's very, very difficult to remove anything that you actually committed. Even if you do a hard reset, it is possible to recover. So long story short, as soon as you did something valuable, create a commit, because no matter what, you will always be able to recover.
So that means I shouldn't do the hard reset before I actually copied the current status into a new branch, right?
Right. So in this workflow that we just did, So you are at the position that you want to store, right? But you realize that that position is in the wrong branch. So the first thing you do is you create a new branch. So you have basically a reference that easily points to that commit. Remember, a branch is no more and no less than a name that you give to a commit. The other approach could be to kind of copy that SHA, that number, right, and have it somewhere. The problem is that if no branch is pointing to a commit, that commit will not show up in the log. And the only way to recover it could be to go to that obscure place that I called a ref log, which is probably not even covered in this lesson. It is a very obscure place. We don't like to hang out in that place, but sometimes we have to. So that's why it's so much easier to just create a new branch wherever you are standing, and that will give you the chance to show that commit with that name that you gave to the branch in the log. Yeah, and then once you have done that, as the lesson suggests, you can hard reset your master branch. You check out the master branch, and then you hard reset it to whatever position you want. Another exercise that we can actually follow up from here is the idea of rebasing a branch. So instead of merging a branch, we can rebase. But before we do that, do we have any last comment or question about the idea of kind of moving branches around your log? Yeah, okay. Always, one way to back up what you're doing is create a new branch, and then you can play with it. You can, usually I create a branch that's called backup. If I'm working on my branch A and I want to experiment with, squashing commits or doing something weird, I do backup A or A backup, so it's easier to look up. And then I screw up there, and then if I don't like it, I just destroy it with git branch delete. Okay, so this idea of rebasing is the idea of if you see a tree, basically, you can understand how the main stem is the equivalent in our analogy with Git could be the main line of development, and a branch comes off to a side. But sometimes, there is imagine a tree that is kind of chopped at the top, right where a branch is coming off to the side. That branch is coming to the side, but it could also be going up and become the main, be part of the main line of development, right? So basically that's the idea of a rebase, where you cut a branch and you move it to the top of the tree and you make it, linear all the way up. So that is the idea of rebase. So let's see my log again. Actually what I like is the decorate. So I'm gonna check out, what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna move master here where I was before. Git branch. Also notice how the head, where this flag head tells me the same information that I would get if I do git branch, right? Basically it's telling me where I'm standing. So the head of the repository is this mobile marker that moves wherever I go. So that's the head of the repository. So what I want to do is to move master to where this exercise kind of started. So let's do git, and I'm going to do it in the way I like, git branch master, and I'm gonna tell, okay, move it to this commit and force the creation of that branch at that point. So if I do now git log one line decorate, you can see that basically I'm back to where I started. So right now I would like to maybe just also review what we did before. I'm gonna totally destroy I'm gonna check out master. I'm gonna start adding commits to master. And so here I am in master. So let's touch a new file, C. As I show you the status, you would expect that file to not, Git doesn't know anything about that. So I'm gonna do git add C, and then commit with the message add C. Oh yeah, obviously the status now is clean, but if I do git log, you can see how I'm pointing here to add C. If I show you all branches, you can see that there is a branch that added B, and it's kind of confusing because I don't see the branching pattern. So I can add one more flag here that is called graph, right? So now you can see how master is in a completely different line of development than B. But what happens if I think, okay, B should be actually part of the main line of development? What you would normally do is you would do git merge new branch. So let's see, I'm standing on master actually. What I want to do is to check out the new branch, right? So if I am the new branch, I could merge master, but I could also rebase it, right? So rebase, imagine you are driving, that's how I think of it. So you're driving on a road and there is a car in front of you. So what you do with the rebase is basically you just rebase it, right? So you go, first go next side, next to it, and then you rebase it and go ahead, right? So that's exactly what you could do with the analogy of the car, and what you could do with the analogy of the tree is that you cut the branch and you stick it at the top. But the one thing to notice about rebase is that when you do it, you actually cut the history of the log and change it. So you lose the original SHA, the original identifier of that commit. So before I actually do the rebase, I want to show you this number here. Maybe I can store it somewhere. Let's create a new file here to paste that number. So that number is D5V4DE2, which is the short form of the very long SHA that actually commit creates. So what I'm gonna do now is, so we want to rebase master. So the lesson actually, when you wanna go back to it, this is the command that we're gonna type. So I'm gonna do git rebase master. So we are behind, we are gonna rebase it, okay? And the perspective is the perspective of the branch. So we are standing on the branch, that's our car, right? And from our branch, we are gonna rebase the other branch, master. It looks like it worked. It is telling us also that it's doing first. It's rewinding the history and then replaying the commits on the top of the master branch. So let's do now again our git log with all the flags that we like and see what it looks like now. Okay, so as you can see, although I'm still using the graph flag, you don't see any branching pattern because we cut it and we stick it on top of master, right? So there is no branches. The branch exists there, but you don't see this bifurcation, right? It's now that commit that was kind of coming off from one side, it is now at the top of master. And also notice what I suggested before. The SHA, the number here of the commit called add B, is different from what it was in the beginning. What is the implication for you when you work in a team? Okay, the implication is when you, if you want to have a visually pleasant history, it's fine to rebase, but rebase changes the history of the Git repository. So you should never do it if you have already shared that work with the world. Basically, if you have, when we talk about remotes, we will talk about this idea with which we are already very familiar, which is that of kind of pushing commits. So the idea of pushing commits is just, okay, I have a local copy of a repository, but I'm gonna share it with someone else. So I put it on GitHub by doing git push. And the history of the repository will be marked by all these commits that have specific identifiers, right? If later, after I share it with, say, Constanza, I decide to rebase my local repository, when I push it again, it's going to have conflicts because other people will be expecting, or the repositories of other people will be calling the same commits with different identifiers. So that will be a nightmare. So again, the long story short, in every recommendation guidelines for Git, you will read a lot about kinds of actions that change the history and actions that preserve the history. Most actions preserve the history, but some, like rebase, change the history. It's not bad, it's not something that you have to avoid, it's something that you need to use wisely. So before you share your work, it's fine to rebase, it's fine to change the history in whatever way you find it more compelling. Generally because you want to tell the story of your changes in a clearer way. And that is the topic of the next exercise, which is the idea of squashing. However, once you share it, you're stuck. You may just live with the history as it is, or sometimes, I find myself sometimes destroying a PR and creating a new one because I want to share a cleaner history, but I already share it. So I just say, hey, I'm sorry, I'm going to close this pull request. I'm going to restart it. So just, forget about that piece of work. Do you have any question or comment before I show how to squash commits? Okay, so it's gonna be our last part for today. The idea of squashing commits is that I cannot illustrate with the history as I have it now, because on top of master I have only one commit. So let's create a new commit. Let's do git couch d. So I don't need a git couch d. Git. Actually, I'm gonna do commit message. Actually, no. Let's add it. Git add d. Git commit message add d. So now my git log, one line, decorate graph, shows that I have two commits away from master, right? So what I would like to do is that, okay, I've been working locally. Let's think of this scenario. I've been working locally. I decided that, it made sense to break out my work in two commits. One that adds A, one that adds B, and the other one adds D. But, when I share my work, the whole pull request or the whole idea is I'm adding new files. I'm adding A, D, and B. So what I'm going to do is squash those two commits in a single one. So remember, we are two commits away from master, and we want to reset. So the way in which it's shown here is the idea of resetting master, right? But not using the flag hard, which will actually move the branch. Instead, what we're going to do is kind of pop these commits, preserve all the changes, and then recommit with a new message. So how would you do that? So exactly how it says here, you would do. So you're standing on your new branch, right? And then you do a git reset. The soft flag, you can avoid it because it is the default, but just for the sake of being strict with the lesson, I'm gonna use it, soft. And you can refer to this point in the history in many ways. In the lesson, they are using, probably just for the sake of changing, they are showing this really nice syntax where you express the commit relative to where you are standing. So you can say, okay, the head, in capital letters, the head is where I'm standing right now. But I want to refer to two commits behind where I am. So you can say tilde 2. Another way would be to say hat, as many hats as commits you want to go back. Another way would be to just say the sha, right? And copy this and paste it here. And then finally, another way would be to refer to that commit using its label, using its name of the branch. So I could say soft master. All those are equivalent ways to just refer to this specific commit. So this is the form that I'm going to be using right now. It looks like nothing happened, but if I do git status -s, you see that now the changes A and B have been popped up from the Git repository and put in what's called the staging area. So I can now create a new commit with a message add B and D. Right, so if I do the log, let's recover the log from a previous command here. If I do the log, as you can see, I no longer have 2 commits, I just have 1. So this is an action that it is very common to do locally. You work in branches in a very experimental way, generally, and then before you share your work with your colleagues, it is kind of good practice to try clean up things a little bit so that it is easier for others to understand what has been kind of the process that took you there. And with that, I'm already almost 2 minutes ahead. So I would like to kind of pause here, see if there is any questions. I know that this is an idea that is probably difficult to digest, but you have the lessons, you have the help desks, so feel free to try things out and ask for help. Because the only way, in my experience, to really learn these things is not reading, is actually doing and working with someone that has done this before. So questions? Yeah. Okay, people, thank you very much for joining this kind of slow series, but one that I perceive as important. I hope that that these patterns that we talked today are something that you can use in your day-to-day work. See you next time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mauro.
Ciao, ciao.